Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be giving a final conclusion of the Eachine Lizard 105S. So to give you a bit of backstory, some time ago Banggood contacted me and asked me if I wanted to be a beta tester of the new Lizard. The idea being that I would fly it and check it out, and if there were any issues I'd report back to them and they could fix any problems with it before it went out to the customer. A great idea. So I did a bunch of tests and I actually made a video going through all the specifications, and I'll link that in the below. But I found one major show-stopping issue, and it was a problem with the camera. Specifically what the camera was seeing. There were loads of shakes when you went up on the throttle, and the shakes were there through the FPV goggles, and they also got recorded to the built-in DVR. So one good thing about this model is it has a 720p 60 DVR recorder, which actually works pretty well, but the footage that it recorded was unusable because there were too many shakes in there and it just destroyed the footage. So I first of all thought that it was a problem maybe with the frame or with the flight controller. You see, these Eachine models, they usually use a cloned flight controller. I don't actually think this one is a cloned one, by the way, but you can see the IMU is isolated here, and sometimes the material that they use to soften the IMU, it's not what the board was originally designed for, and you tend to get issues. So I hard mounted that and it didn't make a difference. I put soft mounts on the motors. I tried installing a capacitor. I removed these braces here and I also put them on the front. I thought maybe that was the issue. I tried lots of things, different propellers, loads of things in Betaflight, you know, changing the notch filters, and none of that worked. And then I published that video, and a lot of you guys said in the comments, have you checked the sensor on the camera? Because in some cases, cameras come with the sensor loose on the board and they can shake. The problem with this one, though, is that the camera and the sensor and the lens, it's all a sealed unit. It's glued together. However, the issue was with the camera housing, and this was actually figured out by Albert Kim. So Albert decided that he didn't like the frame at all, and yeah, the frame has its issues. He swapped all of the gear out to a Leader 120 and he was still getting the vibrations and shakes, so it caused him to look at this camera housing, and what it was is the entire camera module was actually loose inside this metal housing here. You see the lens fits pretty snug, but at the back you can actually move the entire back of the camera only on the horizontal axis. It's fine on the vertical. So he put a bunch of foam in his and it fixed the issue. What I've done is I've taken some blue tack and I have put that in there and it's fixed the issue completely now. So in the end, yes, it was just a really easy fix, which is annoying because I've taken this thing apart so much it's actually ended up killing the camera, which I'm gutted about, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get another one. I'll ask them, but we have Chinese New Year at the moment, so even if I can get one, it's going to be some time until I do. Now, there are still some issues I have with the frame. So Albert mentioned in his video that he could move the arms, and this was actually found out by NJtech as well. The holes in the arms here, they've been drilled too wide, which does mean that you can move these arms. You see that? I can actually just move them up and down like that, which isn't great. However, it doesn't seem to cause too many issues. This thing, as soon as I got the camera secured in place, it seems fine now. Another thing that you might notice is that my battery connector is now coming out of the front. And in my original video that I did, I said that it looked like the battery connector was connected up to the flight controller correctly for the current sensor. However, it wasn't. When I took all of this apart, there's a input and an output on the flight controller, and both the ESCs and the battery connector were connected to the input, which means that the current reading was only giving out values for the power from the flight controller and the camera. And when I watched the footage back, yeah, the current sensor wasn't working at all. I mean, the camera issues overshadowed any of that. But what I actually did was took this all apart and soldered it up correctly. So the battery connector goes on the in pads, and then I desoldered the ESC wire and then soldered it to the out pads, and now the current sensor works fine as well. Be careful doing that though. Like I say, I have ended up ruining this copter. The thing that has caved on it is the ribbon cable to the camera. Just too many times taking it apart. I probably took it apart 50 times. So to be fair, it was actually quite rugged, but yeah, it's failed in the end. So yeah, I'm a bit gutted about that. But it turns out that actually, with just a few simple fixes, this is now a pretty nice copter. It still has its issues. I can't see Eachine replacing the frame, so I think the frame is gonna stay, and I think that's fine. These arms moving aren't great, but it seems to fly okay like that. I still think that the micro SD card placement is a pain. It's really difficult to get the micro SD card out because it's not on a spring, so you have to use a pair of tweezers and be very careful. I do still wish that this ribbon cable for the IMU was out of the back there, so it's protected, and then that would mean your USB connector comes out of the front. But other than that, yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty solid copter. I hope Eachine make these changes. I'm told that these 3D printed parts are going to be properly solid parts when it comes out. So maybe, you know, they will correct the camera issue just with the 3D printed part, but it's something to look out for if you are interested in this model. And like I say, hopefully just a bit of hot glue or gunk in there will be the fix for Eachine. But if they decide to not to listen to anything I say, what I'm trying to get at is they are pretty easy fixes to get a decent result. So yeah, I'm pretty gutted that I can no longer fly this model. The camera ribbon is just too destroyed, and the footage has got loads of artifacts on it, so that's pretty useless. I'm hoping that they come out with a spare part for it so that I can replace it at least. But one thing that I would advise against is messing with this IMU whatsoever, because I now have some kind of issue when it's flying, some little twitches that I didn't have originally, and that's just because I've messed around with the silicone on here, so I would advise against that. The fix is just to jam some blue tack or hot glue, something that's going to fix it in place there, and also soldering these wires in correctly. However, you know, I would probably advise against doing this because you're going to have to take it all apart, and it's absolutely a pain to take apart. You've got these little tiny screws here, so I would just turn the current sensing off. It's a bit of a gimmick and you don't really need it anyways. So there you go, that is my conclusion of this beta version of the 105S Lizard, and I think they are just small changes that need to be made to get this flying. So if you are interested in buying this and they don't listen to anything I say, then you know you can fix it pretty easily. So I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.